Welcome, Wizard Apprentices, to our first episode of the Process Builder, otherwise known as the Lightning Process Builder. So let's go ahead and get familiar. So what exactly is the Lightning Process Builder? Well, the Lightning Process Builder is basically the new way for doing workflow rules. Before, we would have to have all these different rules for each criteria that we have, and then we have all these different actions underneath each rule. Part of the challenge of that is we can't tell from looking at the screen what are the actions that are actually being done. It's all over the place, and God forbid you didn't keep the nice handy dandy naming conventions so they all group together and they're all over the place. Instead, what the process builder lets us do is put multiple workflow rules under a single process. Each workflow rule essentially changes into these criteria diamonds that we can see. And then off to the right, we would see the entirety of every single action that's being done. So let's take a look at that. So here we are at the setup screen. You'll be able to find the process builder under the create menu, workflow and approvals, and process builder. When you click that, it's going to take us to a different UI than what we're used to. This is actually built on the new Aura or Lightning platform that Salesforce has released. And what we'll see is a list of our processes here. And you can see we have processes and our description, our objects, and some wonderful little details. And we'll talk about these in a second. So the first thing is we're going to take a look at an active sample that I have that is already pre-built. And what we'll see here is that I have a series of diamonds. Each diamond is essentially the equivalent of a workflow rule. Each item has a name, can have a set of criteria, or my favorite with the process builder is you could just say, just fire every single time you get to this diamond. It's the equivalent of doing that workflow rule where you set the formula to just be true. This checkbox is the equivalent of the workflow rule where you only evaluate the workflow rule when it's edited and subsequently meets that criteria, meaning that if my discount is list price and my approval status is waiting on approval and the record gets edited again, it's not going to fire because it's had previously meet that. Other items that we can see here is I can see all my wonderful actions underneath each one. And there's tons of actions with the process builder that we don't have with the standard workflow rules. So we'll take a look at some of the actions really quickly. We can call Apex. So essentially it's kind of like writing a trigger as the same thing as writing a process. We can create records, and we're not very limited to what type of record we can create. They don't have to be associated to the record that's being fired upon. It could be completely unassociated, or it could be a child record. We can send email alerts. We can launch flows, which I love. We can post to Chatter. We can do quick actions or publisher actions, submit for approval, and we can update records. And what's really cool about the update records is we can update child items. So in this example, I actually am updating all the opportunity products or opportunity line items that are associated to my opportunity. The downside to this is you have to make the same change to every single product. You don't have some conditional logic built into this yet, and you also can't define what the value of the field is going to be based off of a formula. When you're creating a brand new process, your first step is to give it a name, and we're just going to call this Wizard Apprentice. And I always suggest giving a description, because that way it's easier to know what's going on in this particular process. Once this process is saved, the first step is to pick the object. And this is where you can decide, is the process going to fire just when records are created, or if the record is going to be created and edited. You can also mark this checkbox to allow the processor to evaluate records multiple times in a single transaction. Think of this as kind of like a loop. It goes through the process, it does a field update, and you want it to go back through the process to make sure that it doesn't meet any additional criteria diamonds. So let's go ahead and just pick opportunity. Save at the bottom. And now we can add our criteria. The way that Process Builder works is that each criteria diamond is evaluated in the order that it is presented. So your first criteria is always going to be evaluated first. That means it's really important that if you're going to have other diamonds in this, don't select the checkbox to just fire the actions. Otherwise, you're going to have some problems. So you're going to want to do when filter conditions are met, or when you have a formula that evaluates the true. Criteria name is useful because that gives you an idea what it is. I'm going to pick just test just for today's example. We'll do a better, deeper analogy for this. So here we're going to have amount equals $500. And this way we can say only fire when it's $500. We have other operators including does not equal to, greater than, and so forth. The typical things you've noticed. Some of the things that are different here is, unlike workflow rules where you have to use is changed as a formula, that's now called an operator. So you can say where it's blank, or when it was set, or when it's been changed. We have filter conditions. Those are those common and or mentalities that we can do. So it has to meet criteria 1 and criteria 2 or criteria 3. Once you set up a criteria, you can now add actions, and these actions could be immediate or they could be scheduled. The scheduled is the equivalent of the time-based workflow actions that we're familiar with. Once you've picked an action, each action will have a different value, and we'll take a look at actions in a different video. You can go forward and you can add additional criteria. Now, there are some limitations to this, and I'll post a link in the description to the help document that has those. So this is the very basis for what Process Builder kind of looks like and feels. In future videos, we'll actually build some processes and talk about some use cases. One of the things that people get stuck with is you can't edit a process once you've been activated. You actually have to deactivate it, and then you have to save as a new version or a completely new process. That's what these manage version links are off to the side here. You can see I have multiple different versions here for my opportunity discount approvals, and 2 of them are activated. The other thing that people aren't aware of is that you can't delete a process once it's been activated unless you deactivate it and wait for 12 hours. So there's a 12-hour waiting period. And there's a reason for this. Process Builder is actually using our visual workflow as a foundation. This also means that a lot of the errors that occur in visual workflow are going to occur in process. We'll talk a little bit about some of the flow errors that can impact your process and how you can find things in additional videos. We'll talk about the process errors that you can see as flow errors in a different video. That's it for Wizard Apprentice today. Stay tuned for more Process Builder flows. And as always, please leave a like and a comment and let me know what you would like to see next. Remember, the magic is out there. It's yours for the taking.